As a reminder, this session is going to end at 5:25 so that we can clear the room for the next session, although I don't think there is another session, so we can go as long as we want. You can purchase the book at the Parnassus book booth. It just came out on October 11th, so it's brand new. You'll be the first to have it. We'll be moving up to the signing colonnade when we're done here, and you can follow us up there and buy the book. This festival is free, thanks in part to people like you and me. Help keep it free by making a donation at the Humanities Tennessee booth if you have not done so yet. If you have, thank you so much. We can't do it without your support. You can even Venmo this year, which is very nice. They have a QR code. You just hit the QR code and send your money. Easy, easy. So now on to the main attraction, Sean Dietrich, better known as Sean of the South. Sean is a columnist, novelist, and podcast host known for his commentary on life in the American South. His work has appeared in Newsweek, Southern Living, Garden and Gun, the Tallahassee Democrat, Good Grit, I can't read, I should put my glasses on, South Magazine, Alabama Living, the Birmingham News, Tom Magazine, the Mobile Press Register, to name a few. He has authored 14 books and is the creator of the Sean of the South podcast. Join me in welcoming Sean Dietrich, a.k.a. Sean of the South.
Thank you so much. She read that just like I wrote it. Although I will say the last time I was introduced, I guess it was about 3 or 4 days ago, a woman got up and she was very nervous. She was reading the thing that I had written. And it starts off, it says, Sean Dietrich, noted novelist, columnist, and she was shaking. She just said, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to introduce to you Sean Dietrich, noted communist. And the Alabama governor was in the audience. So I got up, and the first thing I did was I took the microphone, I looked everybody deep into the eyes, and I said, oh, beautiful. And by the time I got to from sea to shining sea, everybody clapped, and I felt like maybe I had won them over, but they did not ask me back again. So I hope it goes a whole lot better here today, but I'm a little doubtful because walking in here had me very, very nervous. We parked in a parking garage, and we got up to like the 6th floor, and by the time we got up to the top, the man said, are you looking for a parking space? And we said, yes. He said, well, there are none. And I said, well, we paid our money. He said, welcome to Nashville. And it seemed like a bad omen, and then when I got down to the street, my baseball team, the Braves, who are playing for their shot at the series, are getting shelled currently as we speak. The score is 8-3. And also, Alabama, the Crimson Tide, who is one of the greatest baseball teams in the entire universe, is getting beaten by Tennessee.
He's going to leave now.
And my buddy called me. He said, are you watching this game? And I said, I'm in Tennessee right now. Well, I wrote this book that she was holding, product placement. You Are My Sunshine, based on something that we did during the pandemic. I guess I've learned ever since that everybody has a pandemic book. Well, I guess this is mine. I thought that was code for a really crappy book. And in most cases it is, from some of the ones I've read, and so you might be disappointed when you read this one too. But it started when my wife had an idea that we were going to take a trail across 4 states. Now the initial nugget of this idea began when my wife and I first got married. We met at a Baptist church a very small Baptist church on Matthew Boulevard, down where we live, in the panhandle of northwest Florida. It was a little clapboard church with a crooked steeple, a tin roof that had more orange rust on it than green. And the paint was chipped, and the staircase that leads up into the church itself was always tended by a man named Jimmy, who was the usher. And Jimmy, the usher, had a past. And we know this because he had a tattoo. And in a Baptist church, you don't show tattoos. But every now and then when us boys, little boys at this church, would stand with Mr. Jimmy before the service started, sometimes he would roll up his shirt sleeve and he would show us the tattoo he'd gotten back in the war during the Pacific War theater. And it was a naked woman. And if he flexed his arm, he could make her dance. Jimmy was one of the ushers at my wedding. I met Jamie at this little church. We got married 6 months to the day after we met, and that means that everybody in the whole world was looking at my wife's Billy. And they'd shake her hand, and you're just glowing, they'd say. And they would just bait her and wait to hear that there was another little Sean Dietrich on the way. There never was. But we got married in a fever, and this coming year will be our 20th wedding anniversary. Thank you. Shortly after we got married, she went to the doctor one day. And life was just beautiful. You know, you carry the sense of grand euphoria when you're a newlywed. I don't know why. It's just hormones and endorphins just coursing through your body. You gain all sorts of weight. I gained 26 pounds in 30 days. That if you think about that, that's roughly a pound a day. That's almost impossible, according to physics. The doctor did a test on her, and he said, "You've got cancer." And she said, "Surely there must be something else here." He said, "No, this is cancer." And I'll never forget it. It was just one of the most surreal experiences of my life. Here was this beautiful woman that I had, put a ring on her finger, and we were going to spend the rest of our life together. And this doctor is telling her that it's serious. Well, she had a little operation, and I can't really tell you what it was, but we got to the little hospital, and we sat in this waiting room that was painted sterile mint green that looked like the living room of a double-wide mobile home. It was a stinky room, I remember that. Why does all industrial rooms smell the same, like some kind of cleaner they used in elementary school? And my wife was looking at a little magazine that was on the desk next to her, and I was also reading a highlights magazine that dated back to the Jimmy Carter administration. And hers was a National Geographic, and she was looking at it, and she was just enamored with what was ever in it. And she said, "I want to do this." And I looked up from my Where's Waldo experience, and I said, "Do what?" She said, "Well, I want to do this trail." And she showed it to me. And it showed this trail that cut through the wilderness. And I had never seen anything quite so beautiful in all my life. There was a man hiking through this trail, and he was about the size of a gnat, comparatively speaking, to these tall maple and beech trees that just seemed to swallow the whole world. And I said, what is that? She said, "Well, this is the Great Allegheny Passage, and it connects to the Chesapeake and Ohio Canal towpath." And I said, "Do what?" She said, "Well, it's about 350 miles. I said, "Uh-huh." She said, "Well, you go on it. You do it." I said, "Okay." She said, "So can we do it?" And I just looked at her and I said, "I don't know. Sure." She said, "Well, you got to promise me." I said, I don't know if I can promise that I can complete a trail like that. You're looking at a guy who was in school. I was more like the class clown. I was not really a athlete per se. The athletes would go to parties and they'd be in the corner of the room getting lots of attention from the opposite sex, while guys like me were trying to attract your attention by performing sight gags with hot dogs in the nasal passages. Do a trail. I said, "I don't think this is right. I don't think I could do it." She said, "Promise me that we can do this." And what do you say? She's wearing a hospital gown, it's one of those hospital gowns that even though we have left the dark ages long behind us, it still is just this gown that is very cheek revealing. And I'll give a few people in the back a chance to work on that. And I said, sure, we'll do it. She said, promise. I said, I promise. She said, swear. I said, well, I can't do that. My mother would kill me. We're not allowed to swear, and we're not allowed to say gosh. We're not allowed to drink NyQuil cough syrup because that's Baptist Scotch. So I guess we have a few Baptists in the room too.
You can keep going.
Y'all been great. Thank you so much. The pandemic came, and being a writer or being a whatever you call me, I'm not really sure what you call me, is a gig-by-gig thing. You work by gigs, and writers will not tell you that, especially at a festival like this. When you sit next to a very high-minded writer, they have this empire that they have built, but really, it's just gigs. You know, they're looking for gigs, and in the pandemic, gigs dried up. There were no gigs, and so I went for almost 2 presidential administrations, it felt like, never having changed my PJ bottoms. I quit shaving, my hair got very long, and I resembled Cousin It from the Addams Family. And it was one day that our mailman, actually, he was our new mail carrier because our old mail carrier had been infected with COVID, and they let her go. And this new mailman was delivering wrong mail to all sorts of street addresses. The guy next door to me got an entire cooler full of Omaha steaks, and he's a vegan. And I went to the mailbox one day, and there was this magazine that advertised fitness machinery, I guess it was. And you knew it was a fitness magazine by the way the woman on the front barely had a thimbleful of body fat. And she was wearing clothes that looked like strategically placed RC cola tabs. Really got to use your brain here. And my wife was over my shoulder. She said, that's it. That's it. I said, that's what? She said, don't you remember this? That's the trail. Trail. We had been married for 18 years at this point. She said, I want to do this. This was the trail you promised me we'd do. The next thing I knew, my wife and I were preparing for an expedition. She would stay up late into the night looking at various ways in which we could die on these 2 trails. And there are a lot, as it turns out. Pennsylvania is where the trail starts, and it happens to be ranked number 3 in Bigfoot sightings. There are mountain lions that have been tagged by the universities up there that wander around with this blinking GPS tag, but they are they're free and they're unafraid of humans because they've been around so many lab students. So I could just imagine myself being gnawed to death by a mountain lion wearing a collar that blinks and says property of, Altoona University. There were spiders. There was poison ivy. It's the most pristine poison ivy patch in the world. Not to mention it was 350 miles. You start in Pittsburgh, and it weaves you down through the Laurel Highlands. You go across into Maryland. You go into West Virginia, then back into Maryland, then down to Virginia. You end in Georgetown, passing Washington, D.C. on your way. There was no way in 12 hells I was going to do this trail. But she was a woman who was obsessed, and she had our entire living room outfitted like a Bass Pro Shop. There were tents, and there were dried foods that would turn your bowels into stone, and there were all sorts of things I'd never even thought of having on the trail, such as a geothermal blanket made out of a Lay's potato chip bag is what it looked like. And a blow-up pillow that weighs 0.3 ounces, and you carry it in your back pocket along with your wallet. And then we left, and we did these trails. And without giving any of the riveting story away, we were in a brand new environment that really did something to me. Being in nature is a lot different than being in your PJ bottoms and sitting on your porch listening to a Braves game while drinking an Ovaltine. And I think it was the first day that I felt myself just kind of open up in this green space, and it was pretty profound. You know, I was starting to feel that I could write a book about this. It's a giant mistake, because whenever you have an experience that you want to write a book about, you're going to be spending the next 12 months every day re-examining that exact experience from every single angle, so that by the time you get to your second round of edits, at one time you liked your book, but now you hate it. And then when you get to the final part where you have to read it in the booth and do your audio, the audio book, you don't ever want to hear the words Great Allegheny Passage again, or Chesapeake and Ohio towpath, which is where I am right now. And this is the point in time when you have to tell people about your book, which I have been doing as best as I can. As you can tell, I'm a natural-born salesman. But something in me has in fact changed after we did this book. Something shifted in me. Before this, we never went outside. We never did really anything outdoors, recreational. And now my wife and I, just this past week, have gone hiking twice at Oak Mountain State Park down where we live. And I know that this coming week I have a friend visiting and we'll go hiking. And I have this machine that I rode for 350 miles, approximately 400 miles, that sits in my office folded up. It's a trike. I forgot to mention that. I took the trail on a trike. I probably should have mentioned that up front.
Really?
Because people treat you very differently when you're out there on a wilderness trail riding a tricycle. People would drive past me and they'd look at each other and whisper as soon as they got past me, they go, "He's just so brave." Well, that trike sits in my office. It folds up, and it's got tires that are much smaller than my wife's bicycle tires. Her tires are like this, so that one of her leg strokes equals 10 of my pedal rotations, which means throughout the entire trail, she would give one stroke, and I would go. And I was kind of like her little brother, just keeping up with. But it did something to me, and we're outdoors a lot now, and so for that I'm thankful for the experience. More than anything, though, my wife and I, we go back for constant checkups. She went back for a checkup this year, and she was clean. And they found something that they wanted to check out, but she was clean. But then I went for a checkup last year, and they found something, and I was having some digestive issues that they thought might be some stomach cancer. At the very same time, one of my best friends was suffering from the same kind of stomach cancer, and she has passed now. She passed just recently. And she would have loved to have read this book because she was one of my biggest supporters. But I do remember when the doctor called me and told me that I was free of cancer. Glory, hallelujah. I was so grateful that I had an opportunity to do something meaningful with my wife, and that I had the absolute profound stupidity to write about it, so that I will always have it forever and ever. And that is my story. You should applaud me.
Oh.
I don't know how they do things in Tennessee, but
We clearly don't applaud.
thank you, by the way.
So I want to know, this trike is the one that you sit back in, right? Mm-hmm. Okay. Did you do any training? Did you either of you train before you went on this?
Negative.
I can't imagine how you could do that.
We went for a few bike rides, and nobody tells you when you start riding a bike that automobile and motorists, they don't pay attention to bike riders. And so we almost had our lives handed to us twice, and after that we didn't train anymore.
So you got on the trail. Talk about the trail a little bit.
The trail started off as a disaster. They drop you off in Pittsburgh. If you do the trail from Pittsburgh to Virginia, they drop you off in Pittsburgh, and there is absolutely no way to find it. It is not marked, and Pittsburgh is not nature.
I promise you can stay.
He sounds like a friendly guy. Anyway, they dropped you off in Pittsburgh, and Pittsburgh itself is, it's a tribute to the age of concrete. There's no trail, and so we rode around looking for the trail for a long time. And I decided right then and there, if I did write a book, that I was going to talk about that and hope that maybe some of the state officials saw it, because not even the policemen knew where it was. We were lost. We lost in Pittsburgh, living like a homeless person with your entire clothes on your back, and you're riding a giant tricycle past men with Escalades with gyrating gold hubs and windows that are tinted with what looks like roofing tar. And they roll down their window and smile at you with all gold teeth. You're in a bad place. You don't want to be in Pittsburgh wearing tight shorts. So that's how it started.
I get such a kick out of him. I don't know about the rest of you, but okay. So one of the things in the story, you talk about not having cell phones. Mm-hmm. What was it really like to not have a cell phone?
Totally freaky. I forget how much we use our cell phones for. So when we didn't have them, first of all, my wife and I are pretty cheap. Actually, my wife was cheap, and she's just the boss. So I'm cheap by default. And our phones were, pieces of junk. And they were in our pockets, and it rained on us one of the first days, and so our phones got wet. And after that, we had no GPS. We had no way to stay in touch with people. You forget that you take pictures every 5 seconds, or when you're doing something like that. So we were totally without a center. It was embarrassing how much I missed my phone. It was really embarrassing. But I'm thankful to tell you today that I have the most current iPhone with thumbprint technology, so that I don't even have to remember passcodes and everything. It's marvelous.
I'm glad you're in the 21st century.
I love it.
Sean.
I love it so much.
What about, did you just keep all this in your brain as you were going? Did you journal it all?
When I first knew that we were going to do it, I bought a journal at a little gas station. They have these gas stations up there that are marvelous called Sheets. You can get in there and buy whatever you want as far as food they got. So we would get food there a lot. But I bought a little journal, and I filled it up completely the first day, and I bought another journal the next day. I had a bunch of journals by the time it was done, and only about 4% of what I wrote down made it into the book. The rest was drivel that I don't even know why it's in there to begin with. But
okay, I wondered if you'd kept it in your head or wrote it down.
A lot of it is in the head. I don't do well at taking notes, which is why I didn't do great in school. I find that if I just engage in experience, I can remember a lot more than if I write it down. If I write it down, I miss most of it. I don't know why. I know that goes against what really, everybody who is a writer in here should do. So don't listen to me, but.
Well, it works for you.
Well, yeah.
So I want to open it up to you all. Do you have any questions for him? Yes.
It took us about as long as it takes most people to finish a PhD. Here's the weird thing. When I finished, there were guys at the finish line who had done both trails in one day. It took us almost 3 weeks. These people, I guess, are superhuman. Well, these guys are not. They're not human. I mean, they were, but it's all over the map for what it takes people to do. But it took us a long time. But we weren't ready for it. The first day was so bad and so grueling, and I didn't know that I'd ever be able to walk again, that we were seriously, we were going to go home. I wanted to go home really bad, and I wish I could say that changed somewhere on the trail, but every day, the only way I could get myself out of bed to do it was to tell myself that we might be going home today. I might convince her to stop, but, I couldn't.
Who else? Yes.
Which one? Marigold? Everybody calls her Magnolia anyway. Well, she's blind. She's a blind coonhound. I was in Mobile. We've had her now, I want to say 5 weeks, so she's still new to my house. But I was in Mobile, and I was meeting my very first blind dog who lost both his eyes to glaucoma. And he was a coonhound. He's 13. Name's Oscar. And his mother is a hound rescuer, and I love hounds. I've had 4 hounds in my life. And my heart was melted by this blind dog. And she said, well, if you like blind dogs, I know where you can get another one. And I said, do tell. She said, well, in Mississippi, they have found a blind coonhound, and she was tied up behind a tire shop with a chain, and she suffered blunt trauma to the face, probably at the hands of somebody who got her and decided she wouldn't make a very good hunting dog, and so he kind of devalued her. So my wife and I were in the car the very next day, and we drove to West Alabama, where we met the lady who had rescued her, and Marigold came bounding out of the car and came up to me, and she pee-peed all over while we were holding, and I knew that I had to have her. And she has one eye that's sewed shut because her eye's been removed, and this other eye is just for show. And when you look at it, it's red. The pupil is always dilated, and it's red because it doesn't work. And we just took her to the vet yesterday, and the doctor said it might have to come out. So since she's become part of our house, part of my household, she has been the light of our house. She sleeps beside my bed. I've never had a dog who needs me to do everything, to go upstairs, downstairs, to find her water bowl, to find her food, to do everything. And it is such a profound human-dog relationship that I've never had before. Last night was the first night we're trying to integrate her with our other dogs, that we had her sleep with the other dog instead of sleeping beside me, so that she could be one of the pack. And I cried because they grow up so fast. And there she was this morning. She got out of the den with all the other dogs, and they were stretching, and she looked so happy. So we're working on a lot of different things with her. She's come to every one of our events since we've gotten her, and so she's been around lots of different people. And my goal with Marigold is, if I have any platform at all in what I do in my life, at this stage, my main goal is that the man who hurt Marigold will somehow see that she is beloved by a lot of people. So I probably push it a little hard, but I do love that dog.
Well, I believe she's here with you.
Yep, she'll be at the book signing for all 5 of you who want to come.
No, the rest, everybody come see Marigold. Other questions?
Yes. Well, I can't lie. I did start working on one, but who knows? Yeah, probably. But who knows? I've had all sorts of ideas.
Yes.
Was your wife glad that she did the trail?
She tells the way she tells it, and she's in the back now looking at me. Yeah, go ahead, Jamie. I was going to say, Jamie and I might be the only two people on the entire trail who we weighed ourselves before we went, and we weighed ourselves after we went, and we didn't lose a dang pound. Not one. That's amazing, isn't it?
How'd you do that?
Well, we ate like hell. we took it as license to eat whatever we want. And like I said, that gas station Sheets, I mean, they have good food. And I was eating burgers by the fistful. But next question.
Who else? Yes.
God, well, God bless you. You get a raise. God bless you for saying that. I'm going to level with you all. If,
Have your attention, please. Now, so we'll reopen tomorrow at 11:30. Entrance is tonight at 4 o'clock.
it's been a pleasure, sir. I'm going to level with every one of you. If you have the misfortune of following me at all, I have no earthly idea what I am doing with my life. So you are everything to me, and I mean that. I am a nobody. I grew up a nobody. I have been a nobody. I could come into any room, and I could look at every one of you, and because of the way that I grew up, I believed that I was beneath you. I just did. But my mother always said, you're not beneath anybody, and you're not above anybody. And I'm just now at this stage of my life trying to live that. But I don't deserve any thanks. It's anybody out there who has given me any bit of support or love or kindness who deserves all the thanks. And they might never know it, but they absolutely do. So thank you.
Anybody else? Sure.
That's okay.
It's my opportunity to talk to you. I'm so excited. Do you enjoy the writing aspect more, or the podcast more, or when you're doing your songs and things that you do on the little theater shows and stuff?
You know, I don't know. Writing is my first love, and writing fiction is my first love. When I write fiction, I feel like I'm a child again every single time, and I also feel like throughout the years, I have not progressed skill-wise since I was a child in that field of writing. But writing that takes me into another world, another place, nonfiction and fiction both. But I do love meeting people, and I'm not an extrovert. I'm actually an introvert, but what I do forces me to be an extrovert, and that is kind of a real weird thing in my life, to crave socialization on a large scale. So I love that. Really, I just love the life that Jamie and I have accidentally built and accidentally fallen into. I mean, everything I do is Jamie's fault. The shows, the books, everything I do, even the subject matter of this book is my wife's fault. So I just really like our life right now, and I hope I can maintain some semblance of not happiness, but some sense of gratitude of where we are long term. So I like it all. That's really a trite answer, isn't it? Yes, ma'am.
Your sense of humor seems to come so naturally, and you've been through some really hard things in your life. Where does the comedy come from?
I was 13, and the girl who lived behind my house, rode horses, and she was beautiful, and I was in love with her. And she had a sister who was a lifeguard at the public pool, and she wore a bathing suit to work. And she was older, and I was in love with her too. And I knew I had no chance with these people whatsoever unless I had some skill to offer them, because I was a very chubby, redheaded child. I wore husky brown jeans. I was buckshot freckled. I have teeth that when I smile, if I get it at just the right angle, I look like Bugs Bunny. So I had a lot going against me. But that young woman and her sister one day said to me, you know, you're really funny. And I've never really thought of myself as funny. And I thought to myself, does that mean I look funny, or that I'm like, you know? And I asked her, what do you mean by that? She said, no, you're funny. And ever since then, I have decided that I was going to try to to process life in a glib way. And that hasn't always worked for me. But I feel like humor is a coping mechanism, and it helps you take a step back. To me, the funniest humor is when someone picks on themselves and they pick on a painful experience that they've gone through. And that's just sad, really, when you think about it. But it's true. So I don't know. I do remember, though, at that moment, at 13 years old, I said, I'm going to try to be funny for these girls. And so I learned every dadgum joke I could learn, and it didn't work, but sorry, long answer. As we know, the library's closing.
The library's closed.
Oh, yeah. We shut her down.
Who else has questions for Sean?
Yes, sir. No, I would have, if it would have been bad, I don't know that I'd be in a space to write, for one thing, and therefore I don't know that I would have gone that direction. I mean, my friend currently, who is married to the friend of mine who just passed, he's at my house right now in Birmingham because we're going to watch the Braves lose tomorrow if they win today, which they're not going to. So, oh, they lost? Oh, hallelujah. Yeah. Golly. Yeah, welcome to Nashville. Well, I'm glad to be here. I know I wouldn't have had the wherewithal to write anything. And I was going to say about him, watching him go through what he's going through it's hard, and it's put a really new perspective for me on. Even the book coming out was poignant because this was a book about my wife. I named it after my wife. We sing this silly song. We sing it. It's code for I love you. When anybody sings "You Are My Sunshine," you all know this. If your mother sang that to you, she was saying "I love you." And everybody's grandmother, everybody's mother. Wherever I go, I sing that song a lot, and everybody always kind of hums along. I don't even have to ask them, which I think that says something. So I don't know what I would have written or when I would have gotten back to writing, but my wife is the most important thing to me. We don't have kids, but we moved to Birmingham this year, and we've made a lot of big moves after her mother passed. And Birmingham's just a great city to raise your dogs.
That's your family.
That's my family. I don't know. I think I got away from your question, and I'm sorry for that. And truthfully, I can't now even remember what the question was.
I have a question.
Sure.
So, did you start storytelling, oral storytelling first, or writing first, or was it a combination?
Well, it was writing first, for sure. And I didn't ever see myself storytelling because that, I mean, how do you put that on a job description, first of all? I mean, people ask what I do sometimes, and I tell them, and they kind of just look at me funny because storytelling, if you're a storyteller, it sounds like you're just saying, I'm a fertilizer salesman. But I always noticed when I was a kid, we had a lot of itinerant preachers come through our church, and I hated church so bad. Not church itself, but I hated sitting through the sermon where he'd preach and that squiggly vein in his forehead had come out, and it was always geared toward coming down the aisle, and but every now and then we'd get these preachers from out of town, and these guys would get to a portion of their sermon where they'd tell just a story. And I remember not just me, but everybody locked in on the story. And I remember thinking to myself, why can't all preachers do that? Why can't all, as a child? Obviously they can't do that. And if there's any preachers here in the room, you've already disowned me anyway. So, but I liked stories. I loved them. And I could just sit transfixed when anybody told a story. And even now, I just love it. And I don't think I don't think that I ever set out to do it. I just know that if I try to say something in another way, like if I sit at a Q&A at a book fair and speak, I'm going to lose everybody. But if I tell a story, I might keep them for, a quarter of the time at least.
Good answer.
Yeah.
Thank you. Let's see. And who else has questions for Sean? Yes.
Really? Yeah. Oh, yeah. No. Yeah, but you do meet a lot of people. I didn't see. I'd never heard of these things except the times that Jamie's, exposed me to them. 1,000,000 people do these trails every year, and it's more though. It's more so this year, and I guess it's growing and growing. There's a lot of people out there. You don't see them. You're not with them constantly, but they're there, and you're always passing each other, and you meet folks from all walks, and it's fascinating if you're like me. I like to go to airports and just people watch. I love to go to, my favorite place to people watch is the Talladega Speedway or the Walmart in Talladega. But you people watch on this trail and you see some amazing things. We were biking one day and it was deathly silent. And we heard, and it sounded like whoever was coming up ahead of us was really struggling. And I looked up and I saw a guy who had a trike. He was riding a trike too, but he was pedaling it with his hands, and his legs were not there. And he was going over this horrid trail, and I was struggling, sucking wind. And here he was going over this trail with his arms. They had, rigged his trike up to where he could use his arms, and his wife was with him too. And we looked at each other and locked eyes for a brief moment, and he passed by, and I was just knocked out. And you see people doing all sorts of things. I saw a kid with cerebral palsy with forearm crutches going every step, working hard for every step. I met, a lady who was doing it for her daughter who died in a car accident. She had her daughter's tattoo of her daughter's infant footprint on her forearm, and she was doing the trail because her daughter had always wanted to do it. You hear some really fascinating things out there. And I think the greatest part about it, this is going to sound so preachy, and for that, you'll have to forgive me. But when you do something like that, you are with people who are always, usually I should say, disagreeing with each other in public, or at least on Facebook. And yet you're out there and you're all getting along, and you're all working for the same thing. You're all talking about where the best place is to get something to eat, where the best place is to pitch your tent. You're helping each other. You're loaning somebody your shampoo. You're talking about things that you share, like the weather and the climate and the temperature of the Yakagani River, which you just bathed in, and you're just about froze your vital organs off your body. That's a really uniting feeling. And the only thing I could compare it to is after 9/11 when the whole nation just kind of came together. You feel that togetherness out there with total strangers. That alone, for me, was worth the experience.
Was this just a bike trail or was it a hiking trail too?
People do both. They'll hike it or they'll bike it, but mostly bike. But they're two trails, so one of them is primarily bike, but still people hike it, and the other one, people primarily hike, but people still bike it. So if that made sense, good for you.
So there's two trails.
Yeah, two trails locked together to form one consistent medieval hell.
So I had trouble visualizing. Like, were you out in the middle of nowhere all the time, or were there little towns that came by? Was it Was it just totally neat? Okay.
It varies. So it goes first. You go through industrial world, and you're by train tracks and factories and steel mills, and then you're in the woods. You're in the Allegheny Mountains, and then there's little towns that you pass along the way, and then you're long stretches of nature. Then you get to Maryland where you hit or actually West Virginia where you hit the Chesapeake and Ohio Canal towpath, and you are in absolute nature for about 184 miles. And there's nothing.
So there's no place to stop and get a burger.
You can, but you have to take these long detours to get off the trail, and you do. And otherwise you're screwed. But yeah, it's fun. But it's intense.
Yes, a question over there.
Why did you ride a trike instead of like a regular bike? What was the impetus?
I'm glad you asked me that. I can set the record straight here. I'm kind of built like Herman Munster. And bikes don't like me. They never have liked me. When I was in second grade, my daddy gave me my first bike. I was already a late bloomer. And I got on this bike, and Chris Booth, a godless child in my neighborhood, who smelled bad and rolled up his cigarettes in his sleeve, even though he was 13 years old, had a driveway that went straight down. And my daddy was pushing me behind on this bicycle, saying, you can do it, even though I'm the most uncoordinated person you'll ever meet. And I'm wobbling, and I'm going like this, and I see Chris Booth standing out in his yard looking at me laughing. And I veered by looking at Chris Booth into Chris Booth's driveway. And I went straight down, and I zipped down and woke up in the ditch. And my bottom two teeth had punctured my lower lip, so that when I drank milk, Mama called making it pee. And I quit riding bikes after that. And so when my wife suggested doing this trail, I said, I'm not doing a bike. I'm not going to do a bike. She said, well, we'll find a way. I said, not unless you get a big wheel. And she did. So that's why I didn't ride a bike.
Who else? Yes.
Have you done any of these book talks anywhere in those towns along the trail? Have you been to Pittsburgh or?
No, no. But I did do something in Pennsylvania last year for a set of Reformed Amish Pentecostals. It was very strange. They were very interesting people, but they were ex-Amish, and they were now Pentecostal. So, and they drank, so there was beer there, and everybody had a great time, really. But I did tell a little story, and this was in Lancaster County, I guess closer to Philadelphia, but not really close to anything. And I told some stories, and I got a lot of information back at me about those trails because they know them up there. But no, I have not done anything up there, and I have strong doubts that they'll ask me too. but you never know. Actually, this is the third time I've talked about it in front of everybody, so that's why it's so rambly and unpolished.
Somebody else, yes.
Would you do it again?
Mm,
Plans to do it again?
no plans.
No.
Yeah, I don't think I would do it again. I went back after I wrote it to go reinvestigate the trails to see what they were really like. And I rode the whole thing by car. And I was so glad to be in a car. And I would stop and I would hike onto the trail just to make sure I had things right in my brain. And it was even miserable in the car. I mean, I got hit. The trail passes through Harper's Ferry, and I hit a car in Harper's Ferry and really dinged it up. And he was not anywhere in sight, and it became a huge disaster. We are still dealing with the insurance company, all that. I wish I would have never gone back and done that. That said, I would do something else, kind of something exciting that I and push myself, because I'm a really fearful person, and I shouldn't admit this. You know, I'm intimidated just being here today with all these authors. I mean, I rode the elevator with one author, and she's somebody, and she looked at me and she was like, "And who are you again?" And that's the question that I don't really like to answer. I said, "Well, I'm here. I'm an author. I'm a presenter." She's like, "Oh, how wonderful!" And I just felt this big, you know. That comes from fear. I'm fearful. I am. I hate it about myself. I hate that I'm fearful. And I'm fearful of little things, such as, is this spider bite going to kill me? Or is this little strange spot on my calf, does that mean that I'm dying? You know, and doing a trail is really, it's kind of a fearful experience, because you know, things could happen out there, and poison ivy scares the snot out of me because I'm deathly allergic. So one touch and, you know, I'm shut down. I could just see myself sitting out there laid up in a tent, and James having to administer, you know, some steroid injection in my neck so that I breathe again. And I swallowed a lot of that like a champ and did this. And when I was done, I had gotten over some of those little fears, and that made me so proud of me to have done something, comparatively speaking, so little, and to have gotten such a big gain out of it. So I'm finding that if I can just tackle some little fears, that the reward is really big for me. So yes, I would do something that I'm kind of afraid of or apprehensive to do. It's a long. I give long answers, don't I? Yes.
How many books did you distribute in the little libraries?
I don't know. I had a box. I think a box of 150. We had 150, at least 150. We're still doing it. I mean, Jamie, we were almost late here because I got rid of 10 in Nashville, and I love to get the message back. It'll be just like a few minutes afterward, and I'll get this message, and it'll be somebody's daughter holding up the book that they'd gone out and got it, and they were just, you know, minutes behind me. But I also take books from these libraries too. I do, and I came home from the last long trip. I went to 6 states, and I had a stack of books that tall, and that was really nice, because I stop at those a lot anyway. I just love those things. So, all right, I guess that's.
All your books, which is your favorite? Minus this one, obviously.
Oh yeah, right. The ones I've written, you're talking about? You know, the publisher wouldn't want me to say it, but they're all just as equally mediocre. I love what I do. They hit people so differently. Some people will message me and say they really liked this book and connected with it, and it means so much to me. But you can't latch onto that and even take it too much to heart, because immediately someone will email you and say that this book was just, how did this make it? How did this get past the editor? I mean, just today, you know, we live in such a society right now where people send such horrible stuff that, I don't know, this probably isn't a very uplifting conversation. So I don't know. I like them all. They were all fun to write. I started the way that I'm even doing this at all was one Christmas. I wrote one little book of a few stories that I had written about the South, about peanuts, about Cracker Barrel, about how I accidentally one time took my wife's hormone medication. And then I started rearranging the furniture in the house. And I liked them. I was really proud of these little stories. They were so small. There's vignettes. And I printed up 150. It was self-published. And I printed up 150, and I put out there online that I wanted to give these away for Christmas presents. And I thought maybe I'd get rid of a few. And in 15 minutes, maybe not even that long, I didn't give anybody else any information. Just said, if you want one, ask me and I'll give it to you. Within about 15 minutes, my phone started dinging. And it was related to eBay somehow. I used to buy things on eBay, and my PayPal account had been hit with a payment for 150 books, and then they kept coming in. And these were just small-town people, and I could not believe it. And so we got rid of 150 books in one day, and everybody had paid for one. And I didn't even know what to do with the money because I didn't want it anyway. So I bought more books, and I got another box and gave some more away. And now I'm doing this full-time, which is bizarre. So I shouldn't be here. I came in the back door. Y'all have been lied to. But I do so appreciate you being here.
Thank you, everybody. Now we're going to go up to the plaza. You all know the drill. And you can buy the book and talk to Sean and sign it, get it signed.
Thank you once again.